Good morning, everyone. I am N.S. Chandan Shri, Assistant Professor in M.S. Ramaya University of Applied Sciences. In today's session, we'll be learning about payment materials. Just to give an overview about the different payment materials, we will be during the process of payment construction, several different types of materials are being used. So to list a few, it is the major ones are the soil. Next one is the aggregates. Next, aggregates include both fine and the coarse aggregates. Then we also use bitumen in different forms. So these are the different materials that we'll be using in the pavement construction. So now we'll start with, we'll learn one by one what are the requirements, what are the tests to be conducted, and for what purposes those tests are conducted. Everything we'll go through in this particular session. So now to start with soil. Soil is used as a subgrade material. So the subgrade for a pavement is nothing, it is a foundation for taking that entire traffic load. So it is very important for us to actually use a very good quality soil with good properties. So pavements are an agglomeration of so many materials, as I said, aggregates, soil and bitumen. These materials and their associated properties and their interactions determine the property of the resultant pavement. If any one of these materials that we are using is of poor quality, then it will be like compromising the entire stability of the pavement. Thus, the good understanding of these materials and how they are characterized and how they perform is fundamental to the understanding of pavement performance or pavement behavior. The materials which are used in the construction of highway are of intense interest for a highway engineer. So this soil properties like CBR or the density, these are one of the deciding properties in the design of a flexible pavement or even in the design of a rigid pavement. So this requires not only a thorough understanding of the soil and the aggregate properties which affect the pavement stability and the durability, but also the binding materials which may be added to improve these pavement features. So apart from soil, aggregates and bitumen, we use several other materials, maybe in the different forms, or maybe some additives we use, or some admixtures we use to enhance the features of the existing soil or existing materials. So it is very important for us to understand the properties of each and every material that is being used. This soil, it's an accumulation or deposit of an earth material derived naturally from the disintegration of the rocks or delay of vegetation that can be excavated rapidly with the power equipment in the field or disintegrated by gentle mechanical means in the laboratory. So this soil material that we use is a naturally occurring material. So it is very important for us to know its property. The supporting soil beneath the pavement and its special under the courses are called as subgrade. So the supporting soil that exists, which is compacted to a required density and a required degree of compaction with the optimum moisture content, it is acting as a base material or acting as a foundation for the entire structure. So that layer is called as a subgrade layer. So undisturbed soil beneath the pavement is called as a natural subgrade. So now when we lay the soil, we compact it to a certain extent, maybe 500 mm thick or 300 mm thick. We will compact and we will compact it up to the required density using the design optimum moisture content. But sometimes but what happens is, beyond that compacted depth, there is the natural ground. So that is called as natural subgrade. So earlier pavement design codes were not focusing on they were not focusing on the natural subgrade, properties of natural subgrade. Only the thought was that the compacted subgrade should be of certain degree of compaction, certain density and certain strength. But present codes are focusing on those things. So now let us understand the desirable properties of the subgrade soil. So now this soil that we use as a subgrade material should possess certain properties. First one being the stability. Now any material that we use as a foundation material or in the construction should be stable. It should not be unstable under let us say now soil, as we all know, soil changes its property as it comes in contact with water. So this kind of behavior should be avoided. So the soil that we use should be very stable. Next property is it should be incompressible. That means once the soil is laid and it is compacted, if it is subjected to compaction at every pass of a commercial vehicle or something like that, then permanent deformations will be formed on the pavement. That is why the soil should be incompressible. Next is permanency of the strength. So once we construct the pavement, the general conception is when we during the construction or during the design, what we do is we take the design life to be 20 years, 30 years or like that. So the pavement subgrade should be stable till the end of that 20, at least till the end of that 20 years or 30 years or so. If the strength keeps on changing with respect to seasons or with respect to the number of years, then the entire pavement will deteriorate because of the reflection of the cracking from bottom to top. Next is minimum changes in volume and stability under adverse conditions of weather and groundwater. So we all know that the groundwater table increases during the monsoon season, and this when the soil comes in contact with water, it starts losing its strength. So the soil that we are using here should have minimum changes or minimum susceptibility to volume change. So in the soils like clay soil or the peat soil or weak soils where the clay and silt content is higher, the susceptibility to volume change is higher. So this susceptibility has to be reduced. Next, the soil has to have a good drainage property. So this complements for the previous point. So when the groundwater increases during the monsoon season or flooding times, the water has to drain out from the soil matrix. If the water is locked inside it, then it poses the problem of volume change. So the properties that the soil that we use should have or should possess good drainage or permeability properties. Next is ease of compaction. Now there are certain kinds of soil like again silty or clayey soils, which when comes in contact with water becomes very soft, and once the water evaporate, it becomes a very hard mass. So now if we use that soil for a soil as a subgrade material, then it will be very difficult for us to compact such kind of soil. So the soil that we use in the construction of a subgrade should pose us the ease of compaction. Next, soil types. Wide range of soil types are available in the highway construction or in the range of highway materials, have made it obligatory on the part of highway engineer to identify and classify the different types of soil. So each and as we move from one region to another region, we see that the soil is possessing a different properties. So it is very crucial for us to classify this soil. Now, soil-based, the broader classification of soil can be a laterite soil or a morum soil or red soil, or we have desert sands, then we have alluvial soil, we have clay soil, which is, we generally call it as black cotton soil, but it is a clay soil. So these are the different kinds of soils that are available. So it is very important to classify the soil. Some of the soils are mentioned here like sandy soil, clay soil, then we have chalky soil, silty soil, peaty soil and a loamy soil. Then there are several different varieties which are depicted here. So now how to classify this? So there are number of methods used across the world to classify the soil. So these are some of the various classification systems are just listed here. First one is particle size distribution. So particle size distribution or particle size classification deals about distributing or classifying the soil using the particle size. So different sizes of sieves are used, and a soil is made to pass through those different size of sieves, and the percentage of particle or percentage of soil or the material retaining on that particular sieve is determined, and depending on the particle size distribution, the classification is done, whether the clay is more or silt is more or gravel is more or sand is more. Next is textural classification. Textural classification also divides the, or here also we classify the soil using the texture of the soil, whether it is loamy, peaty, or is it sandy or gravelly, like that. Then we have Burmister's descriptive classification. Then we have Casagrande's soil classification, which uses liquid limit and plasticity index as an input to classify the soil. Then we have unified soil classification or revised Casagrande's soil classification. That is also BIS soil classification method. Then we have US classification method. Next, Highway Research Board classification method, Federal Aviation Agency classification method, Civil Aeronautics classification method, then compaction classification method, and Indian standard classification method. So these are the several different classification methods available. Then broader classification, if you have to do, soil can be classified as a gravel or a morum or silt or clays. So depending on different size of the particles, these can be divided. So this gravel means it is a coarse material, so particle size under 2.3 mm, or in this gravel we have larger particle sizes, very less fines, so compaction is good. Then we have morum. So this is the product of decomposition of weathering of a parent rock. So visually these are similar to gravel except their presence and higher content of fines. Silt is finer than sand, but it is not as fine as clay particles. Here the cohesion is moderate, or they exhibit very less cohesion. Next is clay. Clay are even finer than silts, but this clay exhibits one of the worst properties, that is cohesion or expansion, or susceptibilities to swelling and shrinkage. So when this clay or the black cotton soil or clayey soils, when it comes in contact with water, it starts expanding. Then when the water gets evaporated, and this soil starts shrinking, and this will lead to volume change, and this creates a problem if we use it in the road construction. Next, now to assess the properties of the soil, there are certain tests to be done on the soil. So subgrade soil is an integral part of the road pavement construction. So now it is very important for us to know the properties of the soil, even with respect to the design, also with respect to the performance. So these are the broad, if we want to divide it into broader perspectives, first we conduct shear test, then bearing test, and penetration test. So if our soil is strong against all these things, then it is said to be a good soil. So shear tests are usually carried out on a relatively small soil samples in the laboratory. So here we will find the strength of the soil against shear. Next, some of the commonly known shear tests are direct shear test. We can do triaxial compression test, unconfined compression test. The choice of these tests depends on for what purpose we are using those soil, or in what conditions we are using that soil. Is it in a damp condition, or is it whether we are using the soil in a very dry condition, or depending on the site conditions we can choose these tests. Then bearing tests are the loading test carried out on the subgrade soil in situ with load bearing area. So these bearing tests are conducted in the field. This is not conducted in the laboratory, like plate load test or like such tests, which are a certain area is loaded in the field and checked for its performance. So performance can be in terms of stress, or it can be analyzed in terms of strain. Next is penetration test. This penetration test may be considered as small scale bearing test, but this is conducted in the laboratory. So one of the example of bearing test is California bearing test. Sorry, one of the example of penetration test conducted in the laboratory is California bearing ratio test, CBR test. So now let us start with CBR test. CBR or California Bearing Ratio test was developed by California Division of Highway as a method of classification and evaluation of the soil subgrade and a base course material for the flexible pavement. This CBR test is an empirical test in the sense by so many experiments, so many laboratory tests, this has been derived and has been used to determine the material property for the pavement design. Empirical test measures the strength of the soil and are not a true representation of the resilient modulus. So we require the resilient modulus of the soil, but still in India for the flexible pavement design we use California bearing test. There are several reasons for not conducting resilient modulus test, because one is the apparatus is very costly and the test procedure requires a skilled person to handle and conduct the test even for the analysis of the result. For this purpose, what certain codes have done is they have found out the relation between the CBR of the soil and the resilient modulus of the soil, so that if we have the CBR value we can get the resilient modulus value for a given soil. But still the design codes have not moved from the changing the design from using CBR to the resilient modulus. Only in certain places they have been implemented, but otherwise the major flexible pavement design is done using the CBR method only. So the CBR, it's a penetration test wherein a standard piston having an area of 3 square inches or 50 mm diameter piston is used to penetrate the soil at a standard rate of 1.25 mm per minute. The pressure up to the penetration of 12.5 mm and its ratio to the bearing value of a standard crushed rock is termed as the CBR. In most cases, the CBR decreases as the penetration increases. So the ratio at 2.5 mm penetration is used as the CBR value. In some cases, what happens is, even if we say the value 2.5 mm, the penetration at 2.5 mm should be used for the CBR. In some cases, for 5 mm it will be greater than the 2.5 mm penetration. But in this case, we have to check first whether there is any kind of error from our side, whether the piston has seated properly or the piston, there is some problem with the piston or something like that. If there is no problem or the human error, then we have to repeat the test multiple times, and in all the trials if we are getting higher CBR for 5 mm when compared to 2.5 mm, then that value has to be accepted. CBR test may be conducted on remolded or undisturbed samples in the samples in the laboratory. So generally it is conducted on a remolded sample than the distributed undisturbed sample. The test is simple and has been extensively investigated for field correlation of the flexible pavement thickness requirement. The test procedure goes like this. Now we will just see the apparatus. Now there is a CBR mold. So we take the CBR mold, and this has the standard dimension. First, initially we space in this CBR mold. The CBR mold is open from both the ends. It has to be placed on a base plate and a spacer disc is placed here. So this spacer disc has a height of 5 centimeter. After this spacer disc, we will place a filter paper and we will compact the soil in 3 layers, giving the designated number of blows. And once we compact the soil here, we have to lift the entire mold. Once we lift the entire mold, we see that the mold will start looking like this. and lift the entire mold and keep it in reverse order, so that 3 layer of soil is like this and the spacer disc is removed. So now 5 centimeter gap is left on the top of the soil. Now this entire unit is, now what happens is they keep now we keep 2 loads here of each load is of 2.5 kg. So total load of 5 kg is applied on this, and this load are applied with the help of 2 discs which have the hole in the center. It has a vent like this in the center. Now those discs are placed here, and this entire system with the soil and the load is placed in water for at least 4 days. So now this, it is placed in a water for at least 4 days to ensure that there is 100% saturation. That means we will be testing the CBR, that is soaked CBR, to test the soil or to measure the strength of the soil in the worst possible condition. So the strength of the soil in the worst possible condition means it has to be saturated to its fullest extent. So if it is coarser grained soil, then the soil will get saturated even before 4 days. But if it is for a if it is for a finer grained soil like black cotton soil or any soil which has higher clay content or silt content, in that case what happens is it would sometimes require more than 4 days. So the codal specification says that we have to compact the soil for at least 4 days. After 4 days, the system has to be removed from the water, and the water has to be drained out here, and like we have to keep it out for 20 minutes or so in the air. After that, this entire system is placed here and under a loading frame. Now this loading frame has a plunger here. As I told earlier, the diameter of this plunger is 5 centimeter. This diameter is 5 centimeter, and then this is inserted in this hole inside the loading frame. Now this setup is connected to 2 things. One is the proving ring which will measure the load. The other one is connected to the dial gauge which will measure the deflection values. So now this loading frame will start loading the entire system. This purple color here indicates the extra load added. This should not be removed until the test is completed. So now this loading frame starts loading the specimen at a rate of 1.25 mm per minute, and the deflection reading at every 0.5 mm is taken down until the specimen fails. So how do we know the specimen has failed? Is we take the readings, and the pointer here goes on moving in the forward direction. Once the specimen fails, it starts coming back in the opposite direction. So now we will take the penetration reading, and after this reading is taken, CBR is calculated at 2.5 mm penetration and 5 mm penetration values. So now let us understand why these loads are put. These additional loads here are put to simulate the dead weight of the pavement. So on the subgrade, whether there is traffic or not, the dead weight of the pavement is always acting on it. So under this worst condition, that is under the influence of water, the pavement should not deflect even without the traffic. So this load that we are adding extra from the loading frame, this load acts as a additional traffic load. Here the load added from this load plates will act as a subgrade, so it will act as a dead weight of the pavement. So now that is how the CBR test is done. Next test, the bearing test, that was about the penetration test. Now we are talking about the bearing test. This is the test which is conducted in the field. So it looks like this. So in the field, the loading plates are put. So the different diameter plates are there. We can use 70, 5 centimeter plate, we can use 50 centimeter plate, 30 centimeter plate. So like this number of plates are stacked and the load is applied here. So once the load is applied, again here also we have a dial gauge and we will also have to measure the load which is being applied. Once the load is applied, so here it is said that the place is seated accurately and then the seating load equivalent to this pressure is applied. And the bottommost plate will have a diameter of 75 centimeter, and after that it is released for a few seconds. Then the settlement dial gauge is now set correspondingly to 0. Settlement dial gauge is this dial gauge which will measure the deflection. So once the seating load is applied, this dial gauge is set to 0. After that, the load is applied by means of the jack and sufficient to cause an average settlement of 0.25 centimeters. When there is no perceptible increase in the settlement, when the rate of settlement is less than 0.025 mm per minute, the load dial reading and the settlement dial readings are noted. So once it is noted, then the readings, the value of, now here in this experiment we will measure the strength of the subgrade as the value of K. So this K is modulus of subgrade reaction. So this modulus of subgrade reaction can be calculated using this particular formula. Now that was about soil. Next type of pavement material that we will be using is the aggregate. So aggregate is a collective term for the mineral materials such as sand, gravel, crushed stone that are used in the binding medium. So here any mineral material that we use, as I told earlier, aggregates comprises of both coarse aggregate and fine aggregate. So here sand is a fine aggregate, gravel and crushed stones, these are the coarse aggregate, right? So now these are used with a binding medium. Which are the binding medium? In certain layers the binding medium is water, in certain layers the binding medium is bitumen, in certain layers cement acts as a binding layers. In the layers like base layers where WMM is used, wet mix macadam is used, water is acting as a binding layer. In the layers where the surface layers and the binder layers, we use bitumen as an binding material, and sometimes when we have to go for the stabilization we will use cement as a or cement or lime for the stabilization of the soil, and there the cement or lime or any other chemicals that we use will be acting as a binding material. Next, by volume, the aggregates generally accounts for 92 to 96% of the composition of the bituminous concrete, and about 70 to 80% of Portland cement concrete. That is, if we are using rigid pavement, then 70 to 80% of the pavement is made up of aggregate. If we are using flexible pavement, 92 to 96% is made up of aggregate. This aggregate is also used for base, sub-base courses from the, it is used in all the layers above the subgrade layer. So it can be either natural or manufactured. Now when I say manufactured, it means nowadays we are using so much of manufactured aggregates like slag. We are using steel slags, aluminium slag, copper slag, so many slags that are coming out of different industries. So that is what is meant by manufactured aggregates. Natural aggregates are generally extracted from a larger quarry by the open excavation method or blasting of the rocks. Extracted rock is typically reused and reduced to the required size. Now we say 20 mm down aggregate, 10 mm down aggregate, or 12.5 mm down aggregate, and these rocks which are blasted are reduced to the required size, and manufactured aggregate is often a byproduct of, as I told you, byproduct of other manufacturing industries. Next, classification of these rocks based on the origin of the natural rocks. Based on the origin, the natural rocks are classified. First, we have igneous rocks, and igneous rocks can be classified based on the grain size, based on the composition. Next, we have three major types of rocks. One is igneous rocks, sedimentary rocks, and metamorphic rocks. So metamorphic, the sedimentary rocks can be calcareous rocks wherein calcium is higher, siliceous rocks wherein we have silica, higher silica content. We also have argillaceous rocks wherein there is higher clay or shale content, higher clay content. Sorry. Metamorphic rocks are fine grained or coarse grained rocks, and examples are gneisses here. Metamorphic rocks generally are generally these igneous rocks are nothing but the rocks formed from a hot lava, condensation of a hot volcanic material. Sedimentary rocks are formed because of the accumulation of certain kind of materials. Next, we have metamorphic rocks wherein it is formed because of the weathering of igneous rocks. Then based on the strength, earlier was based on the origin, classification based on the origin. Now this is the classification based on the strength. So we can have hard aggregates or soft aggregates. Next, based on the British Standard Group classification. So these are the different types of groups of rocks that are available. Next, strength of the aggregate. The aggregate used in the top layer are always subjected to stress action due to traffic. It is subjected to wear and tear. It is subjected to crushing. So now when the vehicle, these are the three things that will happen for the aggregates, or the three things the top layer aggregates are subjected to. For a high quality pavement, the aggregate should possess high resistance to crushing and to withstand the stress due to traffic load. So first test that we will be conducting on the aggregate is hardness. The aggregates used in the surface courses are subjected to constant rubbing action. So what happens is, because of the continuous movement of the wheels, there is continuous abrasion that is happening on the aggregates that is present on the top surface. Now these aggregates should be hard enough to resist the abrasive action caused by the traffic movement. So for this purpose, we do the hardness test. Then we also conduct the toughness. So the aggregate that we use for the construction should be very, very tough to take the impact load from the vehicle. So when a vehicle is moving, now when I say vehicle, it can be the road pavement, for a road pavement, or even for a runway pavement or airfield pavement. When the road is there, these vehicles, when vehicle wheel, when it moves in this direction, every time there is an impact acting on the pavement. So these aggregates that we use should be very, very tough. In case of airfield pavements, what happens is the aircraft during landing, the wheel of an aircraft will touch the ground with a very high impact, because the one is the weight factor of the vehicle or the weight factor of the aircraft. The other one is the impact, or the other one is the speed at which the aircraft touches the ground. So in airfield pavements, if we are using the aggregate, it should have very high toughness value. Then the shape of the aggregate also becomes crucial. Generally, it is advised to use angular aggregates, crushed angular aggregates, because these aggregates will have defined size and it will have a certain roughness factor here, so that interlocking is possible. But we cannot use any other shape aggregate. We cannot use a flaky aggregate like this, or we cannot use an elongated aggregate like this, because usage of this will contribute to the uneven compaction, and these aggregates are weaker when compared to crushed angular aggregates. Next desirable property is adhesion with the bitumen. So aggregates are in the surface layers, aggregates and bitumen is used. Bitumen is used as a binding agent for the aggregates, but this bitumen is hydrophobic in nature. So when this bitumen comes in contact with water, it starts stripping out from the aggregate matrix or the aggregate bitumen matrix, so leaving behind the bare aggregates, which will come out of the matrix and lead to the disintegration of the entire system. So the adhesion with the bitumen should be very good even in the presence of the water for a stable pavement. Next is the durability. So durability property is to withstand this adverse action of the weather, and this is also measured in terms of soundness. So the pavement, the road pavement can be subjected to various adverse conditions, like it can be subjected to chemical action, acid attacks, like maybe in terms of acid rain or spillages or such certain kinds of things. In all this condition, and our pavement should be having very good durability. Then freedom from deleterious material. So we know that this deleterious material, if it is present, it creates it is like we are compromising with the strength of the material. Next, there are certain tests done to determine these properties on the aggregates. First one is the crushing test. Crushing test means a sample is taken and it is compacted in the mold, and the weight of the sample is known before crushing. Then a load of 40 tons is applied, and at a rate of 4 tons per minute. For 10 minutes it is applied, and then after the load is applied, the loading is removed from here, and these aggregates are sieved through a sieve. So now initially we would have taken the aggregates passing through 12.5 mm and retaining on 10 mm sieve, and these aggregates after the crushing, it has to be sieved through 2.36 mm sieve, and the weight that is retaining on it is calculated. So crushing value is weight retained divided by weight percentage passing has to be calculated. So W1 is the weight of the material that is passing 2.36 mm sieve, divided by W2 is the initial weight into 100 will give us the percentage of the material that has crushed. So this percentage should not be too high. So IRC gives us the specification, like what should be the aggregate crushing value. In fact, what should be the standard values for all these tests. After aggregate crushing, next test is abrasion test. So here we use Los Angeles abrasion test. So it's in this test we use a large drum wherein designated number of steel balls are put, and these steel along with the aggregates, and the drum is rotated. Once this drum is rotated to a certain time period, maybe for 1000 revolutions or 500 revolution, depending on what grade of material we are using, then after undergoing 500 or 1000 revolution, the initial weight of the material is already taken before putting into the drum. After that, we take the take out all this material, again pass it through 1.7 mm sieve. Once we pass it through 1.7 mm sieve, take a note of all the material passing through 1.7 mm sieve, then that weight of that material divided by the initial weight into 100 will give us the abrasion value. Next is impact test. Impact test is carried out to evaluate the impact resistance of the aggregate. So here there is a setup wherein a specimen is kept here. Again, the initial weight is noted down, and a weight of 14.5 kg, 13.5 to 14 kg is dropped from a height of 38 centimeters, and this is done for 15 times. So after doing it for 15 times, the crushed value is taken. Again, this crushed sample or this impact sample is taken and sieved through 2.36 mm sieve, and the weight passing divided by the initial weight into 100 will give us the impact value. Next is the soundness test. This is to check the durability of the material against the adverse weather condition. So here what we do is we will calculate the loss in weight of a material. So we will subject it to two different chemicals. We will subject it to alternate freezing and thawing cycles, and 5 cycles at least is conducted, and after the 5 cycles the loss in weight is determined for a given set of aggregate. So loss in weight should not exceed 12% when tested with the sodium sulfate, and 18% when tested with the magnesium sulfate solutions. Next is we have shape test. In the shape test we conduct two types of shape test. One is for flakiness, the other one is for the elongation. So the gauges are shown here. Aggregates, and in all these slots the aggregate size is mentioned, like passing through and retaining on, and aggregates are sieved and passed through this sets, and the mean size is measured, and the percentage of flakiness and elongation is measured to know the flakiness and elongation, or the shape factor of a aggregate. Next is we have specific gravity and water absorption. So to know the higher denser aggregates will have higher specific gravity. So the specific gravity of the aggregate also plays an important role, and the water absorption will help us in determining the pore content of an aggregate. If there is more number of pores in an aggregate, then what happens is aggregate becomes weak. So in order to we cannot use high porosity aggregates there, because that will be like we are compromising with the strength of the aggregate. The next material is bitumen. In the bitumen, before going to the bitumen, we will learn about the bitumen adhesion test. So in the bitumen adhesion test, what or also called as the stripping test, we coat the aggregate with known weight of aggregate with known percentage of bitumen, and we will keep the aggregate for initially for the air drying, and after that coated aggregate is immersed in water for 24 hours, and after the 24 hours visual examination is made to know how much of percentage is stripped out. So lesser the percentage of stripping, more good the adhesion property. So this is these are the list of the codes which give us the procedure of these following tests. Next pavement material is bitumen. In bitumen, if you want to give us, if the overview has to be given, bituminous binders are used in pavement construction works, include both bitumen and tar. So earlier we used to use tar for the construction, but tar is banned in India now. Now both bitumen and tar have similar appearances, they are black in color, even though they have the different characteristics. Naturally occurring deposits of bitumen are formed by the remains of ancient microscopic algae and other once living things. When these organisms died, their remains were deposited in the mud or in the bottom of the ocean or lake where they lived. Under the heat and the pressure, immense heat and the pressure of burial deep in the earth, the remains were transformed into the material such as bitumen, kerosene or petroleum, what we call as a crude oil. So bitumen is extracted from crude oil only. So there are several areas, several regions wherein these deposits are found. These are structural similarities between bitumen and the organic matter in carbonaceous meteorites. However, detailed studies have shown that these materials to be distinct. Asphalt or bitumen, in India we call it as bitumen, in some of the countries they call it as asphalt, both are same, can sometimes be confused with the tar, which is similar black thermoplastic material produced by the destructive distillation of the coal. The source of material for the bitumen and the tar both are different. Tar is obtained from the destructive distillation of the coal, but whereas bitumen is obtained from the fractional distillation of crude oil. During the early and mid 20th century, when the town gas was produced, the tar was a readily available product and extensively used as a binder material for the road aggregate. In addition of tar to macadam roads led to the addition of this tar to the macadam roads led to the word tarmac, which is now used in common parlance to reference of road making materials. However, since 1970s, when natural gas succeeded, town gas or bitumen has completely taken over the use of tar in this application. Bitumen is a petroleum product, as I told you, obtained from the fractional distillation of crude oil. Tar is a thermoplastic material obtained from the destructive distillation of the material. The grade of bitumen used for the pavement construction work of these roads and the airfields are called paving grades, and that is used for the waterproofing of the structures and the industrial floors etc. are called as industrial grades. So we are more interested in paving grade bitumen. As a transportation engineer, this is an topic of interest. The paving bitumen available in India is classified into two categories. One is paving bitumen from Assam Petroleum, denoted as A type, and designated grades of A35, A90, etc. Next one is paving bitumen from other sources, denoted as S type and designated as S35, S90, etc. The viscosity of the bitumen is reduced sometimes by a volatile dilutants added to it, and the material formed by adding bitumen to a volatile dilutant is called as cutback. Next, bitumen is suspended in a finely divided condition in an aqueous medium and stabilized with a emulsifier, and this material is called emulsion. So bitumen plus water plus emulsifier plus stabilizer, emulsifier will give us the bitumen emulsion. So these are the two forms in which bitumen can be used. The major purpose behind converting or using bitumen in these forms is, naturally when we get the bitumen, it is very hard at a room temperature. It is not in the liquid state. So if we have to use the bitumen, we have to heat the bitumen. So for the bitumen to be used in liquid condition at room temperature, these two modulations has been made. So now let us understand the difference between bitumen and the tar. So first difference is bitumen is found in black or brown in color, but the tar is usually brown in color. It will not be found in black color. Next, bitumen is obtained from fractional distillation of crude oil, but the tar is obtained from the destructive distillation of coal or wood. Next is bitumen is soluble in carbon disulfide and carbon tetrachloride, but tar is soluble only in toluene. Molecular weight range from molecular weight for the bitumen to be used in road construction is between 400 to 5000, but same thing for the tar is between 150 to 3000. Bitumen consists of large amount of aromatic hydrocarbon. Tar consists of large amounts of oily matters with low molecular weight particles. Bitumen shows resistance to coating the road aggregates and also does not retain in the presence of water. So stripping will happen. As I told earlier, bitumen is a hydrophobic material. Tar coats more easily and retains it better in the presence of water. So stripping property is very good here. Free carbon content is less, but in this case free carbon content is more. Because of its higher free carbon content, it causes more pollution. It shows more resistance to weathering action. bitumen shows more resistance to weathering action, but in case of tar, as the free carbon content is more, the resistance to weathering action is less. Next, temperature susceptibility is less when compared to the tar. So bitumen is also susceptible to temperature, but at a higher temperature. It depends on the softening point and the boiling boiling or the flash and fire point of the bitumen. But when it is compared with the tar, the bitumen is less temperature susceptible than the tar. Now, different, as we discussed earlier, different forms of bitumen is used. The bitumen is the source of road bitumen is either from the petroleum or by the natural process as a result of geological forces. Cutback bitumen, it's a normal practice to heat the bitumen to reduce its viscosity. As I told earlier, the bitumen is not available, it is not available in the liquid form. The raw bitumen is not available in the liquid form at a room temperature. So it is heated to reduce the viscosity for it to be used easily. In some situations, the preference is given to use liquid binders such as cutback bitumen. So what we do is, bitumen is added to certain solvents. The organic solvents can be kerosene, or it can be benzene, or even it can be petroleum. And when different organic materials are added, different setting will change. So rapid setting, medium setting and slow setting cutback bitumen can be obtained. By adding these organic solvents, we are reducing the viscosity of the material or the bitumen. From the environmental point of view also, cutback bitumen is preferred because heating of bitumen is avoided here. When the heating is avoided, the pollution is reduced. The solvent from the bituminous material will evaporate and bitumen will bind the aggregate. Now what happens is, when we use cutback bitumen, as organic solvents are added to this bitumen to make it to reduce the viscosity, when we want to use it for the road construction as a liquid binder, the material will be in the liquid form. But after its use, these organic solvents added, as they are volatile in nature, they will evaporate off, leaving behind only the bitumen. Ultimately, we are getting the property of the same adhesive property of the bitumen. We are never compromising the adhesive property, but the only thing that we do here is we will reduce the viscosity for our use. Cutback bitumen is used for cold weather bituminous road construction because if the atmospheric temperature itself is low, let us say we are constructing somewhere around Himalayan foothills, or we are constructing in places like Russia or Greenland, or places like that, where the temperature is almost sometimes in the winter it is even below zero. In certain areas, it will be very difficult for us to heat the bitumen from sub-zero temperatures to 40, 50 or 60 or 70 degrees centigrade. So in such cases where the cold weather is persisting, we recommend to use the cutback bitumen. Then the distillates used for the penetration of the cutback bitumen are, as I told you, naphtha, kerosene or diesel or oil, or the furnace oil or petroleum, or even the benzene, anything can be used. So there are different types of cutback bitumen, like rapid curing, medium curing and slow curing. As I told you, depending on what material are we going to add, depending on the solvent that is added, the curing rate changes. So if we add benzene, it is a rapid curing material. If we add kerosene, it acts as if we add petrol, it acts as a medium curing cutback bitumen. If we add kerosene, it acts as a slow curing. It depends on the volatile material, the rate of evaporation of that volatile material. If we are going for a surface dressing or a patchwork, then rapid setting is recommended. Medium rapid curing is recommended. Medium curing is recommended for premix with less quantity of fine aggregates, and the slow curing is used for premix with appreciable quantity of aggregate. Next is bituminous emulsion. Bituminous emulsion is a liquid product in which the bitumen is suspended in a finely divided condition in an aqueous medium. So here what we do is we disperse the bitumen in a liquid medium, that is in water. We add stabilizing agents so that the bitumen doesn't settle at the bottom. So normally cationic type emulsions are used in India. The bitumen content in the emulsion is around 60% and the remaining is water. When the emulsion is applied on the road, it breaks down, resulting in the release of the water, and the mix starts to set. The water starts evaporating. So time of setting depends on the grade of bitumen. The viscosity of bituminous materials can be determined by as per the instruction given in the code IS 887/1995. Three types of bituminous emulsions are there. It is rapid setting, medium setting and slow setting. Depending on how much of water is present, the setting time will change. Bituminous emulsions are ideal binders for the hill road construction where heating of bitumen and aggregates are difficult. So rapid setting emulsions are used for the surface dressing work. Medium setting emulsions are preferred for pre-mixed jobs wherein we will mix the uh, mix that has to cover the patchwork or something before, not in the site. If it is mixed in the plant and if it has to be bought to the site, then we use medium setting. Slow setting emulsions are preferred in rainy seasons. Then we also have bituminous primers. In bituminous primer, the distillate is absorbed by the road surface which is sprayed, and the absorption therefore depends on the porosity of the surface. Bituminous primers are used uh, are useful on stabilized surfaces and waterbound macadam base courses. Bituminous primers are generally prepared on the road sides by mixing penetration bitumen with the petroleum distillate. Then apart from all these things, we also have modified bitumen. So in the modified bitumen, what happens is certain additives or blend of additives such as bituminous modifiers can improve the property of the bitumen and bituminous mixes. Bitumen treated with these modifiers are known as modified bitumen. For example, we can add polymer, any kind of polymer to the bitumen and check its property, which becomes a polymer modified bitumen. We can add crumb rubber to the bitumen and check its property, so that is crumb rubber modified bitumen. So these are the two types of modified bitumen which are used extensively in the varying surfaces, and it depends on its requirements of extreme climatic condition. The detailed specifications for modified bitumens have been issued in IRC SP 53/1999. It must be noted that the performance of polymer modified bitumen and crumb rubber modified bitumen is dependent on strict control of temperature during the construction. So now let us understand what are the advantages of using modified bitumen. So advantages, one is lower susceptibility to daily and seasonal temperature, because we modify the property of this temperature susceptibility using this modifiers. High resistance to deformation at high pavement temperature. Then better age resistant properties. Higher fatigue life for the mixes. Better adhesion between aggregate and the binders, prevention of cracking and reflective cracking. So these are the advantages that we get if we use modified binders in case of, or modified bitumen instead of the raw bitumen. Now lastly, we will learn about certain tests which are conducted on bitumen. So there are 9 different tests which are conducted. These are the basic tests which are conducted. Apart from this, there are several other tests also which are conducted to know the advanced properties of a bituminous mix. First one is a penetration test. Next is ductility test. Next we have softening test, softening point test. Next is specific gravity test, then viscosity test, then flash and fire point test. Then we have float test, water content test, and loss in heating test. So penetration test is 100 gram of sample there is a mold in which sample is taken, and 100 gram of load is dropped with the help of a plunger on this penetration mold, and the depth of penetration is measured using the test. Earlier we used to grade the quality of the bitumen, whether it is soft or hard, depending on the penetration test, and that was called as penetration grade bitumen. Next comes the ductility test. The ductility factor becomes very important, because when an aggregate is used in the matrix, if by some force or something, if aggregate tries to come out of the matrix, if the ductility is higher for a bitumen, it tries to hold back the aggregate inside that matrix, providing additional stability to the whatever layer it is present in. Next is softening point. This test is done by ring and ball apparatus. So we use ring and ball apparatus to test the softening point. We go on heating the water, and that apparatus is placed in water, and the temperature of water is continuously raised, and the temperature at which the bitumen softens and the ball falls down is noted down, and this is helpful to us in determining the softening point. And this point becomes very crucial in the field, because in the field the softening point, if it is known, we can decide at which temperature or at what conditions a particular bitumen can be used. Next is specific gravity test. In the specific gravity test, it is conducted using density bottle. Here one thing we have to keep in mind, that the specific gravity range for a bitumen is between 0.97 to 1.02. If the specific gravity obtained is less than 0.97, then we can tell that volatile impurities have been evaporated out, leaving behind only the remains, and the adhesive property in the material, which in the bituminous material which has a specific gravity of less than 0.97 is reduced. Next, if we get the specific gravity more than 1.02, then it is understood that there is the presence of additional materials in the form of a dust or in the form of heavy material or anything like that. Then next is viscosity test. Viscosity test, nowadays instead of penetration grade, we grade the bitumen using viscosity value. Next is the flash and fire point. So this noting down the flash and fire point of a bitumen is very important in the field, because in the field the bitumen is continuously heated, and the bitumen should not be heated beyond this flash and fire point temperatures, because if it happens, the chances of fire hazards in the field is more. Then we have float test and water content test and loss in heating. So these are done to know the volatile materials present in the bitumen, and water content present in the bitumen, and also it is conducted to know the other properties of the soil, other properties of the bitumen. So these are the tests that are conducted on the bitumen to assess its property. Thank you.